One of the ways that we can keep players engaged in our game is by oscillating between upward beats and downward beats. Basically, this means good things happen, then bad things happen, then good things happen, and then bad things happen. Robin Laws, a longtime RPG designer, wrote a book called Hamlet's Hit Points, where he describes this in detail. And he talks about the fact that the idea of upward and downward beats have basically existed in fiction as long as we've been writing fiction. The basic idea is that the audience, or our players, are more interested in the story if there's an oscillation between good things happening and bad things happening, rather than all good things happening or all bad things happening. If we have too many upward beats in a row in our game, it's going to result in the game getting kind of boring. Everything's kind of too easy, and people just aren't really that interested in what's going on. If we have too many downward beats, players are going to get kind of bummed out. It's not going to feel great, it's going to feel hopeless, and players are going to get disengaged and start to think about why the DM is punishing them instead of what's going on in the story. But if we can continually go up and down in the beats of our story, if we can have good things happening and then bad things happening, that is going to keep players on edge. Good things happening, they get rewarded for their activities. Bad things happen, they run into hard situations they have to deal with. We don't want to be too prescriptive with this. Like a lot of these ideas, we want to hang on to this with a loose grip. Generally, we want to have an idea about the way the pacing of our game has gone, what's the general feeling, and what kind of beat we want to drop in next in order to keep that feeling going well. If a lot of good things have been happening to the characters, maybe it's time to drop them into a hard situation. Or if they've been having a really hard go of it, maybe it's time to give them a bit of a reward or give them a situation that's a little bit easier. So what do these beats actually look like? When we're actually running our game, what constitutes an upward beat and a downward beat? Well, an easy one is easy battles and hard battles. If we're going to throw a lot of combat at our characters, easy fights are ones that are going to be generally upward beats. It's going to feel really good. The players can drop in lots of things. They know they've dominated their foes. It's going to be really easy to do. A lot of DMs think that ends up being a waste of time, but as long as we don't do it too often, it's going to be really interesting for the players to be able to show how much more powerful they are than their foes in certain circumstances. These easy battles are also a good opportunity to drop in opportunities for role-playing or exploration instead of just having everything be a fight. Now, on a downward beat side, we could have a really hard fight. We could have fights with lots of monsters that are alert, maybe in a situation that definitely gives an advantage to the monsters over the characters. There's lots of different ways to make challenging fights, and a lot of DMs like to drop challenging fights all the time. They really want to push the players to the edge. But if you do it too much, it's going to feel kind of hopeless. It's going to feel like a slog rather than feeling like something interesting. This is why I highly promote using a mixture of easy and hard battles rather than just a series of hard battles. What are some other opportunities for upward and downward beats, particularly in different locations? If you happen to be deep in a dungeon, how can we have an upward beat in this ancient dungeon? Well, they could break through a wall and find a healing fountain that lets them regain healing as though they had spent a short rest. Maybe they find a ghostly NPC who can help them out. Maybe they run into some lost treasure and realize that they don't actually have to go through a whole gauntlet in order to get it. There's a bunch of different ways to drop in upward beats in our game, and it's actually useful to list out potential upward beats and potential downward beats that we might drop into our next game. If we think about where the characters are going to be in the next situation, if they're going to be down in a dungeon or exploring a city or engaged in some kind of negotiation, what are the good things and bad things that might happen? One of the important things to consider with upward and downward beats is that we generally aren't going to have an idea about when we need them until we're actually running the game. This means it's important for us to be able to improvise upward and downward beats instead of preparing them ahead of time. It's far better to have a list of 10 different potential upward beats and 10 potential downward beats and keep those on hand so that when we're running our game, if we feel like things have been going really badly for the characters and they could use a break, we can drop one of those upward beats on them. If we also think that they've been having too easy a time, maybe we drop one of the harder beats on them. This is a really good way to prepare to improvise. We want to keep the pacing of our game going in an interesting direction. We want the players to stay engaged. And then we have the tools on hand, these lists of upward and downward beats that we can drop in at any given time. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter, subscribe to my videos here on YouTube, support me directly on Patreon, or pick up any of my books. Thank you very much and have a great day.